All right, everyone, welcome to day 25 of the 30-day redemption. I am Chaashab, and today we're going to take a journey under the topic of cult redemption. And the reason why this topic is very important on the spiritual journey is because just as much as there are many spiritual paths and many spiritual denominations and many church denominations and temples and all these various types of expressions of spirituality, there are also many cults, and they express themselves in different ways. So remember, this 30-day redemption is about mind, body, and spirit. We're definitely not pushing any particular doctrine, but we are about mind, body, and spirit. And in that, we've done 10 days of mind, 10 days of body, and we're now in the fifth day of our spiritual journey. And some of the information may be relevant to you, some of it may not, but what we're doing is presenting it so that the thinking about that information will spark you to do your own research and allow you to be able to come to your own conclusion. So join us on this cult redemption journey. And if you have any questions, we'll try to leave some time at the end, but it is a long presentation, so make sure you take whatever notes and have your questions ready at the end. So we're going to do a cult redemption 101. This is a more extensive conversation than a 1 hour segment will allow, but it will spark some thinking. Hopefully it doesn't spark too many offenses, but if it does offend you, it may be something to look into as far as why. Why is there an offense and where is it coming from? So let's start by defining what a cult is. The word is thrown around a lot. It's usually used in the religious expression of someone's belief. So we have three definitions here, and each one of them are relevant. So the first is a system of religious veneration and devotion directed towards a particular figure or object. So that may be God, that may be Jesus, that may be Allah, that may be a person. Later on, we'll talk about it. For example, we talk about the beehive, in regards to Beyonce. That is a veneration towards a particular figure or object. As a matter of fact, in the entertainment world, what do they call it? They call it your idol. Okay. So the second definition is a relatively small group of people having religious belief or practices regarded by others as strange or sinister. So we have organizations that do that. Sometimes it's some fraternities, some sororities, some religious organizations that you're not familiar with. The monks may be strange to some. The Catholics may be strange to others. Hebrews may be strange to some. And so sometimes that religious belief or practice falls into the space of culture, and it's just different. Okay. And so that may be considered a cult. The third definition is an organized group of people, religious or not, with whom you disagree. So that may be one country versus another, xenophobia, or what they're doing over there is strange. That's those people. Some of the people in their country may be saying, yeah, you Americans, or you Yankees. Okay, so there are multiple definitions to cult. So when you use it, just consider that you may be using it wrong, or you may not expand the definition wide enough for a cult for you to be able to see how maybe you're in a cult. How do you know if you're in a cult? Okay. Worship, homage, care, labor, cultivation, culture, reverence. These are some of the other attributes of a cult. How would you know if you are in a cult? Well, if you're already on the inside, you wouldn't know. I have a quote that says, for me, cults are like the COVID-19 for the spirit. No one is exempt. Just because you don't think you're in a cult does not mean you're not in a cult. You just don't know you're in. Here's a few popular cults that you may or may not know. Some you might have heard of, and some based on the definition of cults. And of course, this is not an extensive list. This is just an abbreviation or a summary. But a few popular cults that you may have heard of: the Moonies, the Universal Church, Scientology, John Travolta, I think also Tom Cruise, Jonestown, the Jim Jones, the massacre, where people get the popular term drinking the Kool-Aid when it was really Flavor Aid. The siege at Waco, the Branch Davidian. Some of you might be old enough to remember that, and they raided the compound and burned the place down to the ground. Charles Manson and his followers. Child sex traffickers have their cults, sex cults. ISIS, they've considered a cult. Al-Qaeda. There's an organization called the Family International. One of the things that they did in their cult was use sex as a recruiting tool. But they had a pretty big membership. It was a form of solicitation where they call it free love. And the women were groomed and encouraged to have sex with the men as a form of pulling the men in. It's an organization called Landmark, where in France they're banned. They're being considered a cult in France. There's an organization called the New York Institute of Social Therapy and Research. They called it a therapy cult, where they use social scenarios to kind of get into the psyche of people. And some of these organizations also, after they got into the psyche of people, also began to move politically to try to get candidates elected. What better way to elect someone than to get into the psyche of the followers, get into the emotion of the followers? This was in the 70s. So we know 50 years later that the advancement of these experiments and this research has been used. It's a gentleman by the name of Yahweh ben Yahweh. He was self-proclaimed Christ of his time, had followers, even had angels of death, men putting hits out on people that disagreed. You might have heard of Skull and Bones. It's a Yale-based organization. They have a skull in the middle of the picture, supposed to be the skull of Geronimo. Using that to conjure magical powers. Some of your popular ex-presidents and presidential fathers, George Bush was a member of Skull and Bones, both junior and senior. And some of the other political candidates, I believe John Kerry was also Skull and Bones. This is researchable information. There's an organization, a black organization called the Boule, who on their website indicate that they wanted to be the black Skull and Bones, kind of doing the bidding for the political process and rearing up the minds of people to do certain things. Secret societies are also fall under that category. A good indication to see Skull and Bones, you can see that movie The Good Shepherd with Matt Damon, and they showed some of the rituals that they were doing, laying in caskets and being peed on. Seems a little strange, seems a little cultish. Some of the founders of the Skull and Bones went on to run the CIA. George Bush Sr. And then there's a black organization called the Nuwabians, cultish Dr. York, and they set up an organization in Georgia. Dr. York used to lead an organization called the Ancillar Community in Brooklyn. Left out of Brooklyn, went to Georgia. Some of your favorite rappers were also Ancillar Community, Jaz-O, Jay-Z. That's their foundation. And Dr. York went on to form the Nuwabians in Georgia. It's the guy that had the pyramid, and he was the center. He was if you looked at any of their books, You know, he was Moses, he was everybody. He was everybody brought forward in this time, and they pretty much revered and honored and worshipped him. What are some indications of cult behavior? And also the previous slide, I fall short of naming some modern day cults. There's some that still exist. Um, Having men and women do various activities that are kind of using the scriptures a little bit, kind of using the word a little bit, even using their fame. You know, unfortunately, even within the black community, you become a leader once you make a certain amount of money. You know, $100 million will put you in the good graces of many people who will revere you as a god because of the money. Um, and I'm not saying this is being done, but you know, just yesterday it came across my desk. You know, Kanye West is a billionaire. Sure, a lot of people who want to listen to Kanye, if they're not already listening, remember this is the guy that they were saying was crazy. He turned around wild crazy and made $1 billion, quote unquote crazy. I'm sure he has a lot of people's ear and attention because in our community, especially the black community, you are an expert based upon the amount of money you make, or if you're on television or the radio. So, what are some indication of cult behaviors? Let's take a look at it. In the 1960s, Professor Robert J. Lifton was researching mind control. In his book, Thought Reform and the Psychology of Totalism, he gave 8 indicators of cult behavior or brainwashing. He came up with these indicators after doing a study of US and Chinese prisoners from the Korean War in the 1950s. And so China was using thought reform on their citizens to get them to be in sync with the philosophy moving forward. You have to get in sync with the philosophy moving forward. So there had to be some changes made. And now we see years later, China, because they created something called the Chinese Dream. And they were pretty much on task to be a global leader this year. And then all of a sudden, a virus hit. And that position is threatened. But anyway, that's the sidebar. This book is a great book. I adjure you to get it. And if you can't afford to get the book, go onto YouTube, download, or just find it and listen to it. But in the book, he spoke about 8 indicators. Let's take a look at them. Try to stay to the left of the screen. We'll get to the right of the screen after. Here are some 8 indicators. The first is called the milieu or environmental control. What does that mean? That means that you have to control all the communication. You have to control the environment of your people. You have to control their communication. Sidebar, and we're going to get to some of the things happening in the present day world. All of your communication is tracked. When you're left only able to communicate through text and social media and phone while quarantined, your communication is controlled. But in the cult, they control the chain of command. Who do you speak to? Who are you allowed to speak to? How you're allowed to speak? Where do you meet? So the cult leader is very much focused on making sure that all communication is controlled. Mystical manipulation. Setting up someone as a charismatic leader or telling you that you are more special than anyone else. And I'm not saying if that's not true. I'm saying if it's just a lie. Certain supremacist organizations tell this group that they're special and at the same time control the group. So that combination. This happens in all organizations. This happens in corporations. They call it corporate culture. This happened in multi-level marketing or what they call it now, There's another term for it now, but these happen in all organizations. Your upline. Um, there's an organization called Amway where they confess that they've created a cult-like environment. There's a book that speaks about create a cult-like following. I think it's the 48 Laws of Power. Create a cult-like following. So it's not unheard of that cult behavior um, is used in business, is used in churches, is used in mosques, is used in states, because they want to see and predict the results. So control the communication and put titles on the people. This is the leader. These are the elect. These are the better than. Now, if it's true, it's true. But it's not always true. Demand for purity. This group over here needs to do a ritual. Hazing is a ritual. In certain places, baptism and the way they do it. And again, this is not an attack on anyone's faith. This is just showing how this thing is rebranded and keeps resurfacing in various ways. The military, you have to cut your hair a certain way and be broken in. When you come in, if you're an immigrant to the United States, you have to be what? You have to swear in. If you want to enter into any type of political office, you have to take an oath. There's no escaping it. When you go to school and you're a youngin', what you have to do, you have to do the Pledge of Allegiance. The demand for purity is a transition from whatever stage into the cult. The cult of confession. Certain organizations straight up tell you, you got to confess to the priest. Certain organizations, they want you to expose yourself in front of an audience of people. Some organizations, they want you to act like you caught the Holy Spirit in a circle of people who are telling you, catch the Spirit. Ultimately revealing your personal life, private life, your occupation as presented in a sensationalized form in a book, newspaper, or movie. So you have different ways you express it. You express yourself, you're naked. That's pretty much ultimately it is. Make you totally naked and exposed. Not necessarily for your benefit, but this is what we do here. These are private type of relationships brought out into the public. Then there's the sacred science. Oh, we have all the answers. All the answers are over here. We have the answer book. And that plays out not only in religion, but the experts have said that eating kale and anything like that you don't know, but it's on TV, it's true. Oh, I saw the meme, it's true. Most of us don't do the research. Now, it may be true, but you don't know. The sacred sciences. If the leader says it, that's it. Then there's loaded language. There's certain language that everyone uses within the organization. The cult over here, the recent one says, make America great again. They even have chants behind it. We're going to get to the other side. Doctrine over person, Constitution or whatever, Bible over whatever. And I love the scriptures, so don't get me wrong. But you also have to implement spirit behind the information. So, for example, if the scriptures, you read it and it says sacrifice an animal for your sins, you have to also use sense to know that you can't sacrifice an animal for your sins, because the setup that was then isn't now. You know, you still have to think. You have to reason. You have to let your spirit kick in. But doctrine over person. Some corporations don't even use, like, this is a person. Well, you've been fired and we have to escort you out. The very person you might have hired is the one getting you escorted out. You're done here, sir. Our policy Look at the children that were children of the immigrants that came from uh, Central America, and they took those people's children because you're now on U.S. soil, and the policy gives them power and jurisdiction over you. So, what happened to those people and their children? The children are separated from their parents, but the policy, okay, and then dispensing of existence is the leader can make you not exist. Snap of a finger. That's either you're, yeah, you can die because the organization that you were once part of now no longer embraces you. Have been cast out. You've been labeled as an outcast or a rebel, or you're fired, or you're no longer welcome here. That kind of language. So let's look at how that applies today, and if you are in fact in a cult. Because unfortunately, many people have this, I'm not in a cult, you're in a cult because you're in a church, or you're in a cult because you're in a fraternity, or you're in a cult because you're in a Masonic order. I'm not in a cult. You are in a cult because if you're exhibiting cult-like behavior, doing strange things, like you go into a room and they say stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance, and you stand up and do it, and you don't even really know why, where it came from. Look at the Kaepernick scenario. He's like, I'm not about to be singing no Star Spangled Banner or anything because it's racist. They're up in an uproar. All the people in the cult up in an uproar. How dare he question the foundation of the principles? Foolishness, right? So let's look at the indicators in the present world of cult-like behavior. In the milieu of control on the left, when you look to the right, there's a monopoly on the communication within this country. There are main organizations who own a slew. Rupert Murdoch owns a slew of media companies, including print, radio, television. Let's look at social media. One company, Facebook, owns Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. I saw Zuckerberg on a video talking about at any given time, there could be 700-800 million people using a platform. They control Instagram, Facebook, and WhatsApp. Google controls Google for the search engine of the world, YouTube, and the ads is going on. They control the ads that you see. Amazon has a monopoly on shipping and products. Hundreds of millions of billions of dollars. Communication is controlled. If they want to know, whoever the they is, want to research you, they can hit up Facebook, Instagram, Google. They have something called Google Pixels, and they can see your IP address wherever you go on the internet. Wherever you could come off of Google, and wherever you go, that Google Pixel follows you. That's why if you go to Amazon and you have you search for something, then you go to Facebook, you'll see the same thing you just finished searching on Amazon in your thread. And then there's iPhones and various apps that listen into your conversation. So you could be speaking to a friend, and the next thing you know, the same something within that conversation ends up in an ad on your Facebook or on your Instagram or in your email. So communication is controlled very tightly. They call it big data. All of these conversations are being wired through software with artificial intelligence bots that's able to take that information and break it down and break you down and know you better than you know what the next move or the next thought. If anyone's seen the movie Minority Report, they were able to predict who would create a crime based on certain behavior before the crime is committed, and arrest you for the intention, not even the act. So communication is very tightly controlled. Texting, email, social media, FaceTime, every communication. And now as we go into the Internet of Things, or 5G, everything will be connected. This is someone's attempt to play God. So communication is controlled in the cult that you live in the present world by default. Charismatic leaders, they have to have someone who knows how to appeal to people, whether it's positive or negative. You don't have to like them, but their name stays in your head. What is this dark triad? The dark triad speaks about the personality of the cult leader. Okay, and I'm going to read a little bit about what the dark triad personality is. Just a quick little blurb. Okay. The personality of the, hold on, bear with me 1 second. Sorry. It says the personality of the person that has a dark triad personality in psychology. A dark triad refers to the personality trait of narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopath. Machiavellianism and a psychopath. For anyone who wants to know what Machiavellianism is, I'm sure you know what the other personality is. Let me just grab that, just to make sure we're all clear here. In the field of personality psychology, Machiavellianism is a psychological trait centered on interpersonal manipulation, unemotional coldness, and indifference to morality. Don't care about you. Care about them. Me, me, me. So let's take a quick look at how a charismatic leader, the effect that they have, on their audience. Let's take a quick look.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
They are part roadshow, part love-in. But Donald Trump's presidential rallies are all parts Donald Trump.
Well, thank you very much, and hello, Tupelo. This is great to be with you tonight.
And exactly 1 year from next year's election, Trump rallies are also giant, momentum-building campaign infomercials, eaten up by all who turn out to watch, listen, and cheer.
But while we're creating jobs and killing terrorists, the Democrat Party has gone completely insane.
It's both what he says and how he says it.
And we are kicking their ass, I'll tell you.
Trump may be behind in the polls broadly, but say those here do not discount Trump supporters, because you know what motivated supporters do? They get out and they vote. And Trump seems to know it. On this night, Tupelo, Mississippi.
Hello, Dallas.
A couple of weeks ago, Dallas. A week before.
So I'll stop there. You kind of get the point. So when you look at it through the lens of understanding the indicators, you begin to see something. You get to see that the charismatic leader can steer the direction of the cult followers. And so you have to ask yourself, are you in a cult? Because someone could be political and at the same time believe that although they're political, they're not, what's the term I'm looking for? I'm political, but I'm not religious. Well, you don't have to be religious to do something religiously. And some of this behavior is very cult-like, even though it's not in a church. The next characteristic, demand for purity, is this new spirit of citizen versus immigrant, or citizen versus foreigner. And we're here to protect our citizens, and so build a wall. And if you're not an American citizen, and that type of conversation is the demand for purity, which is the separation and creating the us versus them spirit. And this is not just a Trump-based philosophy that we're talking about. We're not talking about the Trump philosophy. We're talking about the spirit of us versus them. So this is not just, this is not just a Trump-based philosophy. This is a philosophy of cults versus non-cults. Okay, so the citizen versus immigrant, the us versus them, this divide and conquer splits into not only the insiders versus the outsiders, but who amongst the insiders are the upper echelon, the 1% versus the 99%, the black versus the white, the gay versus the straight, the suburbs versus the hood. It just keeps splitting and creating these pockets, and then you have individual leaders within those pockets leading the people and their mini cults. The cult of confession. Social media, the first thing you go on, and what does Facebook ask you? Well, what's on your mind? Like, Facebook, I don't know you like that. But we all jump in, myself included, and we plug in our little 2 cents because Facebook said, well, what's on your mind? And that information, you begin to confess what is on your thoughts. And some of you are experts in sitting down, reading other people's thoughts and saying, oh yeah, you know, she's probably going through something. Or some of you even bold enough to jump in the box and, are you okay? I'm okay. Just posting some thoughts. But all jokes aside, you are confessing when you give your thoughts, when you take polls, when you take censuses. You are confessing private information, which is supposed to be private. Look it up. You know, you have privacy rights. But when you give up those rights is when you participate. As long as you participate, no one will tell you that you don't have to. Okay. The fifth is the sacred science, which is manifested today as, you know, the scientists have proven, and we've done a research paper that shows, and data shows this, and research, and well, the celebrity said it. I saw it on Fox News. It's true. I saw it. I read it in the New York Times. And so we give people power over us because they must know. I mean, it's in the. I read it in the New York Times. You know, Jay-Z said it. My doctor told me that I have cancer. They said that I have COVID-19. I mean, they said that the African community are more susceptible to the COVID-19 and that type of stuff. And no one does the research because the experts said it. And hey, now you can target a group of people because someone said something. So that's the sacred sciences. They are the experts and you're not. Loaded language, I touched that already. Cult, there is cult language. Okay, Make America Great Again is cult language. Keep America Great is cult language. Even in some of our religious context, you'll have people repeating the same thing over and over to each other, especially in some of our Black organizations. We wear down the 4 or 5 words we learned in our cult over and over again. So there is language that's cult-based language. There's even certain language in certain neighborhoods that's just part of the language. Go to New Orleans, they're like, hey, baby, everything is, that's what, and we say, that's what we do down here. You know, same thing up in New York. So there is a cult-based type of language. And some of it is culture. So I don't want anyone to go away thinking, man, am I using cult language because I said, no, just understand that there is a cult-based language. And if the language separates the you from the them, then it starts to get a little bit, but why do you do that? You know, and you have to start asking those questions. Doctrine over person. Well, the Constitution is the law of the land. Or, well, the Bible says, and you're talking to someone who loves the scriptures, loves the Lord. I'm just saying, sometimes we don't think about, even in the scriptures, it tells you how you're supposed to behave when you're dealing with someone that doesn't know, or when you deal with someone that made a mistake. But if you get so hardline that you're not thinking, now that you become a worshiper of information, you become a worshiper of the Constitution, even corporate guidelines. You know, our policy here, you know, you could see someone in a position to help someone. Let's say social service. They're in a position to help someone. And you turn that person around or turn that person down because, well, our policy does not allow us to give you any kind of milk unless you fill out this paperwork, ma'am. My baby's hungry right now. I'm sorry. I wish there was something that I could do. They say that. The human forgets to be a human because the policy tells you you can't be a human. That's a cult. The next is dispensing of existence, and we touched on that. But modern day, it's, oh, we're going to have to deport you. Or people dismiss you because, I'm sorry, what school did you go to for speaking spiritual matters? Oh, I didn't go to, the dismissing of, so where do you work? Oh, I'm an entrepreneur. Or dismiss you because of your religious beliefs. Some of the people who are Muslim in America before COVID-19 couldn't have their face covered. That was looked upon as something weird. Now we're walking around with our faces covered and we don't think it's weird. But it is kind of weird. But we say it's necessary. Well, how come it wasn't necessary for those women in their faith to cover their face? Especially some of the countries that they came from where there's so much going on. It's okay to have your face covered, even if it's for the reason of preserving that for your husband or modesty, or it might have been a sandstorm. We don't know, but it's different. So people dismiss you because of your religious belief. You get dismissed. In this country, an American over a Muslim is a conflict. So you may have a person that is a Muslim within a organization, and people don't trust them because being a Muslim suddenly means being a terrorist according to the cult philosophy in this country. So you have to ask yourself, are you in a cult based on these 8 indicators? And if you are, then some work needs to be done. A gentleman by the name of Stephen Hassan developed the BITE model. Steve Hassan was in a cult and was able to get himself out. And he wrote a book, and we're going to touch on the BITE model shortly. But the BITE model describes the specific methods that cults use to recruit and maintain control over people. BITE stands for behavior, information, thought, and emotional control. Let's take a look at it. So this is the BITE model. For those of you whose eyesight is going as bad as mine, I'm going to squint and get that information to you. So under B, we have promote dependence and obedience, modify behavior with rewards and punishment, dictate where and with whom you live, restrict or control sexuality, control clothing and hairstyle, regulate what and how much you eat and drink, deprive you of 7 to 9 hours of sleep, exploit you financially, restrict leisure time and activities, require you to seek permission for major decisions. So that's under behavior. This doesn't matter if you're a child or a grown-up. You know, when they're dealing with the milieu of control and control communication, This is an important part of those steps. Under the I, we have information control, deliberately withhold and distort information, forbid you from speaking with ex-members and critics, discourage access to non-cult sources of information, divide information into insider versus outsider doctrine, generate and use propaganda extensively, use information gained in confession sessions against you, gaslight to make you doubt your own memory, require you to report thoughts, feelings, and activities to superiors, encourage you to spy and report on others when it comes to their misconduct. The misconduct can be you're questioning the cult. Okay? You have questions and someone is writing down your behavior. Or you may be someone who is living in America and have some problems with some of the things that are being done. And someone somewhere is documenting your thoughts, and you'll end up in a file somewhere. There's files on just about everybody. If not a paper file, there's definitely a digital file, because everything you do online has a digital footprint. So there's a file someone could cross-reference when they run the data on you and use any keyword and pull up your conversation and question. On this day, you said this. You were speaking about the bite model, and we just wanted to know, are you free from the cult? The T is for thought control. Instill black versus white, us versus them, good versus evil thinking. Change your identity, possibly even your name. Use loaded language and cliches to stop complex thought. Induce hypnotic or trance state to indoctrinate. This is a big one. When you're watching television, for example, you go into a theta state of thinking. That means that whatever information needs to get into your subconscious is going into your subconscious. There are certain people who use their voice to hypnotize you. They use musical talent with certain music to hypnotize and seduce and direct your thinking. For example, Clear Channel back in the 90s was snatching up a bunch of black radio stations. 1999, 2000, they're snatching up all throughout the country, buying up black radio stations who were playing music that appealed to, various audiences. Buying up some jazz radio stations, format change. Like you could be listening to a radio station one day and the next day you go back and it's some different format because it's a different owner and they have a different goal. So from 1999 until about now, the content that you have, the 18 songs in a row, the music that was put out, especially in the 90s and the 1999s and so on, in the black community especially, control the behavior. The music makes you want to get the tattoo on your neck. The music makes you want to wear the skinny jeans. The music is telling you how to behave sexually, how to behave emotionally. And so that milieu of control of communication now was able to control the content. And the content was able to hypnotize the listeners. And then you turn around and they say, oh yeah, the black community is more susceptible to COVID-19 because you have a psychological infiltration, a food infiltration, a habits. For example, they was pushing drug music heavy. In the 90s, they was pushing the sell the drug music. By the 2000s, they're selling the use the drug. Popping mollies, the weed music. Everybody had a blunt in their mouth. And this is nothing against anyone doing the medical marijuana, et cetera, but a buddy of mine told me, look up COPD and how it affects your lungs. And COPD and COVID are cousins. Because when you go in, they're not going to know if you're suffering from a problem with your lungs from smoking weed or if you have COVID. Once they label you, that's it. Cigarettes, weed, however you want it. But just know that this induction of hypnotic and this need to behave like everyone else. Even the drinking, excessive drinking, excessive smoking makes you more susceptible. If you research mind control, the 3 indicators that it will get into your subconscious and program you was, number 1, creating a stressful environment. Number 2, repetitive information. Number 3, something that would open up the gateway of your psychosis. Back then, when they was doing it, was LSD. But weed works just as good. So open up your psychology, repeat 18 songs in a row, and put you in the hood will probably induce you to be under some kind of mind control. And you think they don't know that? Research Kaleidoscope Radio. These people know exactly what they're doing. So yes, are you dealing with some kind of cult? Through your radio station. All right. Teach thought-stopping techniques to prevent critical thought. You look at some of the math some of these children are learning in school, and the technique to solve the problem creates 4 more problems. Back in the days, you should be able to look at the number and know that 4 plus 5 is 9. No, they want you to show how you got to the 9. Ridiculous. Allow only positive thoughts. Use excessive meditation, singing, prayers, and chanting to block thoughts. If you ever look at any of the videos on the Jim Jones, they had the people singing. If you look at yourself on social media, singing along to the latest Cardi B, doing the same thing. 18 songs in a row. Reject rational analysis, critical thinking, and doubt. That's for the T. So now the E is emotional control. Instill irrational fear, phobias. Back in the days, they were talking about the Russians are coming. Now they're saying the terrorists are coming. Now they're saying that the COVID monster is coming. You're wondering, hey man, we just went from 2,000 people having it to 5,000. Am I next? You run around with a phobia. And I'm not saying it's not real. I'm saying that instilling of fear is a mind control while home with your, marijuana, with your medical card to get your legal marijuana. Probably could get it on delivery. Maybe Amazon will start selling it. I don't know. And then you're listening to the same content on your television and social media, you're probably going to come out of COVID-19 in a cult. Or you probably went in. And none of us is exempt. I'm not exempt, but at least I'm aware of this information, and now you're aware of the information. Okay? So we're still in E. Label some emotions as evil, worldly, sinful, or wrong. Teach emotional stopping techniques to prevent anger, homesickness. Promote feelings of guilt, shame, and unworthiness. Shower you with praise and attention. Love bombing. They do that. Oh, welcome, 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 welcome. We just absolutely love you and little Raheem here at the Boys and Girls Club, and we welcome you. You're always welcome. They use that tone. Stop talking to me like that. You got to stop talking to me like that. But we, some of us, we just go along. Oh, thank you. Yes, we're so happy to be here at the Y. If it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't be here. It's like some of the stuff that people sell you are stuff that belong to you. Like the $1,200 check is your money. They gave you $1,200 and gave the corporations $12 million. So our government really looks out for us. Now, I'm not going to turn on the $1,200, just a sidebar, but I'm just saying, we got to start thinking better. The love bombing. Watch out for the love, because sometimes the love is strategy. Threaten your friends and family. Shun you if you disobey or disbelieve. Teach that there is no happiness or peace outside the group. And that's a big one, because that rejection They say that sometimes when people get fired, it's worse to them than a death. Imagine you at a place 15 years and then they walk you out. You're going to go through some kind of rejection, depression, because your world went from 9 to 6 to nothing. So even a job creates a cult-like environment. Okay. Is social media considered a cult? Some say, well, I'm not into politics and I don't go to church and I don't subscribe to any religion. So the bite model don't apply to me, and the totalism and thought reform model and the 8 indicators don't apply to me. Well, are you in a cult based on being on social media? Let's take a look at it. The bite model, virtual cultism, behavior control, deprive you of 7 to 9 hours of sleep. How much time do you spend on social media? Look at the picture of the woman at the bottom. What happens when you wake up 3 o'clock in the morning? You roll over, grab your phone? Do you even realize you grab your phone? Observe how everyone is walking around with their head down. That is the portal. They call it a smartphone. What's ironic about the smartphone is that there's something called the smart grid that's coming, and the smart grid works off the 5G. So you had the smartphone before the smart grid. Then there's something called smart dust that will be dust particles that can track everything. So somebody had a plan. So is your phone being used as a way to get the cult, the lily of control, the communication to you? What is the I? Information control requires you to report thoughts, feelings, and activities to superiors. Superiors in this case is the digital system. Encourage you to spy and report on others. Hey, we didn't like that video. Hit the little complain button. Somebody did that on one of our videos because I guess they thought that the content was risque. The content is informational. We're not going to censor things that you're dealing with in your world. You're a grown-up. You're supposed to do your research. But someone was kind enough to hit the complaint button about something that we did. Now, if anyone has been tracking this 30-day redemption, there's nothing that's been done more than to inspire people. Even if you disagree with the content, you're free to hit X. But for the most part, we have not put out anything out of order. We might have put out some things that people don't agree with, but such is the world, okay? But encourage you to spy and report on others. The misconduct, report any behavior that's against community guidelines. Thought control, change your identity, possibly even your name, your fake account. You know, you could be Raquisha, Queen of the Hood Johnson. Nobody asks any questions. Fake news also is a way. Thought control is the next one. And so change your identity, possibly even your name. Fake news also is a way to change your thought. There's a way where you can take a video and make the person's mouth say things and have someone else reading the voice that is not even that person. And someone can say, I saw you on video say this, that, and the third, and it be a lie. Like there's a whole technology for that. There's also crisis actors and people that play roles. And once it's videotaped and you see it and you see the police and you see the person getting shot, you don't even know if it was staged. It was Hollywood, but can have you rallying and flipping cars because I saw on my timeline this happened and I'm outraged, and you go with the emotion. Emotional control, promote feelings of guilt, shame, and unworthiness, comparing yourself to others, design the lives of other people based on their pictures, videos, and characters. Oh my God, look at her and her husband there. Oh wow, they took a trip to Peru together. You know, you never take me anywhere. They're on a backdrop. They're in front of a backdrop or something. You seen those pictures where they show people using fake windows for the plane, and you like, man, I never go anywhere, and it makes you want to go somewhere because you saw a picture of someone going somewhere. So yeah, virtual cultism is real. Okay, and you get showered with praise and attention, likes, loves, emotional comments. You feel at home. Some even say Facebook family. And I've even seen personally some people rolling over in their cover saying, good night, Facebook. Stop it. Are you conforming or transforming? Let's take a look at this quick video of conformity and a conformity experiment, and ask yourself if you've done this at work, if you've done this in school, if you've done this online in your life. Take a look.
But an experiment is not a public opinion poll. It examines behavior under the pressure of social forces, as the experiment of Solomon Asch reveals.
The experiment you'll be taking part in today involves the perception of lengths of lines. As you can see here, I have a number of cards, and on each card there are several lines. Your task is a very simple one. You're to look at the line on the left and determine which of the three lines on the right is equal to it in length. All right, we'll proceed in this order. You'll give your answer.
Only one of the people in the group is a real subject, the fifth person with the white t-shirt. The others are confederates of the experimenter and have been told to give wrong answers on some of the trials. The experiment begins uneventfully as subjects give their judgments.
2, 2, 2, 2,
2,
3,
3, 3,
3,
But on the third trial, something happens.
2,
2,
2,
2,
2.
The subject denies the evidence of his own eyes and yields to group influence.
1,
Asch found subjects went along with the group on 37% of the critical trials. But he found through interviews that they went along with the group for different reasons.
1,
1,
They must be right. There are 4 of them and 1 of me.
1,
This subject's yielding is based on a distortion of his judgment. He genuinely believes that the group is correct.
1, 1,
1,
2,
1, 2,
2, 2,
I know they're wrong, but why should I make waves?
2,
In this case, the subject knows he is right, but goes along to avoid the discomfort of disagreeing with the group. Here, the distortion is at the level of his response.
2,
2,
2,
2,
In the previous experiment, the naive subject stood alone against the group. In this variation, Asch gave the naive subject a partner, here seated in the third position, who also gives the correct response.
1,
1, 2,
1,
2,
With a partner, yielding drops to only 5% of the critical trials compared to 37% without a partner. Although subjects report warmth and good feeling toward the partner, they typically deny that he played a role in their own independence. The partnership variation shows that much of the power of the group came not merely from its numbers, but from the unanimity of its opposition. When that unanimity is punctured, the group's power is greatly reduced. Sometimes we go along with the group because what they say convinces us they are right. This is called informational conformity. But sometimes we conform because we are apprehensive that the group will disapprove if we are deviant. This is called normative conformity. The strength of the normative factor is shown in another variation carried out by Asch. In this variation, the subject is told that because he had arrived late, he would have to write his answers. Subjects in this private response experiment are exposed to the same amount of misleading information as other subjects, but they are immune from any possible criticism by the group.
1,
1,
1,
And this enormously reduces the pressure to conform. Conformity drops by 2/3. Asch's experiment is a classic. It reveals how people will deny what they see and submit to group pressure. It allows us not only to observe conformity, but to study the conditions that increase or reduce its occurrence.
So which one are you going to choose? Conformity, to conform, or to transform? You should choose to transform. That's why we're here. That's why we're doing a 30-day redemption. That's why we're doing a cult redemption, is because it is time to take control of your own brain. You know, when I did my first presentation on the mind, I said you have people taking up real estate in your mind and not paying rent or mortgage. So you have to claim back what is yours. Here's some recommendations. They have 8 points. Well, I have 8 points. You can create a schedule. Time wasted, or they say idleness is the devil's workshop. Create a schedule. What are you doing with your time? How much television are you taking in? Because they're going to keep putting in content. How much social media are you taking in? Create a schedule. Even Facebook has a little indicator that you can set, and they'll let you know, yeah, you passed your hour. Set that if you must be on. But create a schedule. Stick to the schedule. Get deliberate content that you want in your mind to give you predictable results. If you don't want the content to motivate or inspire or influence you, then don't put it in. Get deliberate content that's going to get you where you would like to go, okay? And that could be if you want to go on vacation, you know, and some of you have seen this, they call it the secret, or the attraction, the law of attraction. What are you attracting to you? What type of content, what kind of images, what type of people are you attracting? What type of content are you creating? One of our presentations is going to be a dream board. You know, someone's going to show you how to put together your thoughts to create the kind of results you want. It may not actually be a dream board, but that's the title that it's under. You'll see that probably within a day or two. But deliberate content. What would you like to create? You have online, you have Pinterest. Create a Pinterest account and put the type of things you want in your life and gather those images. Keep that in front of your mind. Put it on your screensaver. The other recommendation is create a regimen. So you have your schedule, you have your content, you have your regimen. What am I going to do now? What am I going to eat? What kind of food schedule? What kind of food am I going to eat? What kind of content am I going to take? And what kind of exercise am I going to do? And do I have an accountability partner, someone that is going to remind me or do it with me, that's present with me through the process? Very important. Create a contract with them. I'm going to hold you accountable. You're going to hold me accountable. Do not enter into agreements with people if you don't intend to be agreeable. If you don't intend to follow through on what you're asking them to hold you accountable for, why would you enter into that? So you have to be teachable. You have to be someone that someone can say, hey, remember, don't just flip it. Well, I'm not doing it today. Then the whole contract was a waste of time. Follow through. Get adequate sleep. That's something, you know, and I'm speaking to myself. Get adequate sleep. A good night's rest makes all the difference in the day. That's your night shift. Make sure your night shift, because that's the time where that content that you put in to your conscious mind, whatever you read, whatever you looked at, now your mind is putting that information into your subconscious so that your spirit and your muscle memory, based on the exercises that you do, begins to transform you. So make sure you get adequate sleep. Spend some time in nature. You came from nature. If you're disconnected from nature, you have been transformed. You have been conformed to society. Get back into nature. Get back into yourself. Put your hands in some soil. Get into a planting program. Plant a garden. Go by the river. Go fishing. Go up the side of a mountain. Stay in a cabin. Spend some time in nature. Spend some time with yourself. Spend some time in meditation. Some time in prayer. Read a good book. Have a good conversation with a loved one. Time with yourself. If you need to and you have to go, see a therapist. Be part of a support group of people that are like-minded, or people who have gone through the same things, and cross-reference some of those things that you've gone through. Maybe some of the people that's coming out of the United States of America cult. Maybe some of the people that's coming out of some of the church cults. Maybe some of the people that are coming out of some of the other corporate cults. Former co-workers. Let's talk about it. Yeah, this is what happened. All right, what are we going to do about it? And work on something together. And then tell your story. Write a book. Gentleman I showed earlier, he wrote a book. He's making money from telling his story. Create a blog. If you're going to be on social media, tell your story on your wall. Create a fan page. Journal. There's something called blogging. You can keep it private, or create videos on your phone, store it in the cloud. Look at yourself. Tell your story. Get it out. So I'd like to bring in, at this time, Jabrita. We're going over a little bit, and please bear with us, but this is an important topic. So Jabrita, are you there? And if so, can you jump in with me? And I'd like for Jabrita to talk a little bit about, let me make sure she's here so I don't get you guys hyped up. Okay.
He's here.
Okay.
I'm here.
All right, perfect. So, Jabrita, tell a little bit about what you do. You were on here day 3, but just tell a little bit about your background, and then I have a question for you, and we can just chop it up a little bit.
Okay. My name is Jabrita Shelton. I am a trauma transitions coach. I am also a certified victims and survivors I am a certified victims and survivors coach as well. A little bit of my background, why I got into trauma is because, first of all, it's experience. Second of all, I have a love for behavior modification and helping people transition their trauma into triumph. So I'll go ahead and let you start with your question, Chaashab.
Okay. So my question is, if someone is now leaving any one of the cult-like, now that we're labeling and seeing that these are some of them, not all, cult-like environments, whether it's a multi-level marketing cult, you know, where you have to recruit people no matter what, money or not, whether you're in a corporate environment, they calls it corporate culture, whether you have come up in the church or come up in the mosque or come up in some kind of religious environment, or whether you are straight up and down coming out of a cult, Scientology or any one of the others. When someone now comes out of that, what type of things have you seen someone deal with, or is that even considered trauma when they go through that? And what type of behavior do you see them going through when that happens?
Okay, so I am going to, first of all, I guess, give you some terms and what I like to call emotional trauma transitions for escape. Or for escaping, traumatic experiences. So, for instance, let's talk about fear. I know you mentioned it, and by the way, you did an amazing job with this presentation. But you mentioned fear, so let's talk a little bit about fear. Of course, everybody. Well, let me not assume that everybody knows what fear is. We know the feeling of what fear feels like, but I'm going to give you the terminology of what fear actually is. So fear is the emotion caused by belief that someone or something is dangerous, or is it causing pain or threat. So the first thing that most people experience when you are trying to transition out of cultic background or behavior is fear. It's the fear of, am I going to be in imminent danger? Is anyone outside of the cult in which I am in, or the religious practices in which I have been in, are they going to accept me? So fear of being accepted, fear of, not being accepted by the same group in which you were once a part of. The next emotion that you may experience is anxiousness. Anxiousness is experiencing worry, being uneased, nervousness, or even the paranoia, usually surrounding the imminent event or certain outcome. So, I used to do this, or I used to have this belief. Now I'm wrestling with my own belief, and me wrestling with what I thought was right, as opposed to what I'm now experiencing, is causing me to be anxious. It's causing me to worry. That heightened worry also plays back on that fear. Again, as it becomes preemptively dangerous, or the thought of pain or threat. And then you have another emotion, which is, typically I describe it as regret. So, did I make the right decision by leaving? Feelings of sadness and being disappointed, repentant of something that happened, or a certain loss or missed opportunity. So while everybody else, why it seems as if everybody else is having a good time and everybody else is still enjoying themselves, and they haven't been woke to the cult, or they haven't been awakened to the things that I've been awakened to, as a result of that, maybe I should go back. Maybe I made the wrong decision by exiling myself from from something that was once comfortable for me. Maybe I made a mistake. And so you begin to wrestle with feelings of regret. And also as you are wrestling with the feelings of regret, then you are still becoming anxious and you're still playing into that fear. So all of these play one into the other. And then lastly, is shame. Shame is the feel of humiliation. Let me slow down. Shame is the feeling of humiliation or self-distress behavior caused by your conscience of wrong or foolishness. It's the loss of respect and the loss of value that you have within yourself. So, we talked a little bit about fear. Fear plays into anxiousness or anxiety. Anxiety now is playing a big part in regret. Did I make the right choice? Am I making a mistake by leaving what is most familiar or what is comfortable to me? And then you deal with shame. Me leaving this group, something that I grew up in, something that I've been around, something that I've been taking part in, of knowing it's my level of comfort. And now I'm dealing with rejection. I'm dealing with being outcast. I'm dealing with the shame of, the decision that I have made, which also causes me to regret the decision that I've made, which also heightens my anxiety and also plays into the fear. And so all of those are basically, one after another of emotions or waves of emotions that you go through when you're transitioning trauma and escaping the familiarity of, cultic behaviors, as you stated before, whether it be professional, religious, in business, whatever that may be. Those are some of the things that you pretty much experience as waves of emotional and also psychological. Let me be very clear. This is not just emotional things that you experience, but these are also psychological changes that you experience as well. And I didn't mention isolation, because isolation is a really big part of the transition of trauma. You begin to, remove yourself. And as you remove yourself, you don't just remove yourself from the group of people that you were once around. You begin to isolate yourself from people in general because you feel ashamed. Excuse me. Because you feel ashamed. And also because that shame is built around that regret of, did I make the right decision? And if I did not make the right decision, they're not going to accept me anymore. Excuse me. So that's what I have, in terms of the emotional trauma transitions of escape, that, you go through the emotional and the psychological changes that you go through. I can add a few more things. Like I said, we did talk about isolation, but those are really the basis of the channels that people go through when they are in the middle of transitioning, that guilt, that shame, that regret, the isolation, the fear of, and then that anxiety that's built around, those feelings.
Excellent. Okay, well, that's good. And what we would like to do, and I'll share a little bit more about this towards the ending of the slides, is we have to do workshops on these things, because I think people need the tools. in order for them to, like now we're doing the kind of identifying, but we need the tools and how to counter and how to prevent these things. So Jabrita, thank you for that input. I'm going to go ahead towards the rest of the slides, but we are going to, just for anyone that's interested in knowing more, we will be doing workshops on this. We may do 10 days when we do the, the 30-day redemption in the future. We maybe do 10 days of identifying cults and how to counter them, something like that. But I'll let you know. So, Jabrita, thank you for that input. Did you have anything else to add before I go to the next slide?
I do not. Thank you for having me. I'm going to stay here. I do. In fact, I'm sorry. There's one more thing I do want to piggyback off of is the how to transform. I want to just add to, you said the last thing you said was tell your story.
Yes.
I want to add to that, why is telling your story important? It's important because, for one, it adds healing, and it also releases your fear. It releases your anxiety. It causes you to take courage and have to look at things and deal with them head on. It also brings education. It educates other people. One of the most important things in you becoming woke or becoming awakened or aware of, where you are in the cult or where you are in the trauma transition, the most powerful thing about understanding where you are and taking the courage to walk away is you being able to educate someone else and help them out of what you were just delivered from. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, Jabrita, thank you so much for your input. That's Jabrita Shelton, and she will be present for any questions after. We'll try to leave a few minutes, and I apologize for us going over, but again, important topic. All right. So in summary, cults exist in religious, political, social, entertainment, and even business environments. So although cults exist externally, cult redemption begins internally, and that happens through self-discovery. That happens through discovery of your purpose. That happens through family. That happens through culture. That happens through nature. That happens through your faith. And most of all, it happens through love. So find what you are seeking internally. All right. This is me, Chaashab. You can find me on Facebook, facebook.com/Ask Chaashab. And I'll be happy to communicate with anyone through there. At some point, we will launch the Ask Chaashab website. But for now, what we do have is the 30-day redemption website. And you can share this with others, and we will be doing some of the things that will be done on Ask Chaashab eventually through 30-day redemption, such as what we're doing now. So I'm going to open up the lines for anyone that has any questions. We're going to take maybe 5 or 10 minutes to answer any questions. You could direct it to me, or you could direct it to Jabrita, and we'll be very happy to answer your questions. So does anyone have any questions, any thoughts, any comments? You can unmute your mic and go ahead and ask.
I have a question. So this is Yane. So my question is, it's funny because this topic has been a series, like a topic that I've been discussing for like the last couple days. So I have a few friends that are getting an MSW and stuff like that. I went through something last week that kind of made me a little depressed. And so what I realized is that from whatever I was going through, I was very, very upset, but I was more upset with myself. And so when I was talking to my friends, I asked them, I said, if I'm upset, why do you think I got so upset with myself? And their response was, maybe there's some underlining things, or there's things that you haven't dealt with, there's some things you haven't dealt with. And I asked them, I said, okay, so once you acknowledge that you have some maybe past trauma, or current trauma, once you acknowledge that you have trauma, then what do you do? And the answer that they gave me was everyone's different. And that's pretty much what it is. They were like, a therapist's job is not to tell you the answers, but to guide you. But I've been, I was talking to someone else, and the answer that I come up with is kind of like, it becomes more about being conscious. Like the more conscious you are of the things that maybe trigger you, because I can't really see a way to get rid of past trauma or any trauma, but if I'm more aware of it, then maybe that will help me moving towards the future. So I'm just asking you if that thought process is correct or not. But you guys, it doesn't matter who answers it.
Jabrita, would you mind jumping in on that? And then I could probably come in after if needed.
Yes, absolutely. So to speak to you, Yoni, first of all, I do first of all congratulate you on recognizing your area of trauma and also your triggers. That is really the first thing that I usually speak with my clients about, is being able to be head on, being able to identify exactly where you are. Now, to answer your question, there is a way to transition trauma. There is a way to heal trauma. The first step is in recognizing. The second step is in, first of all, understanding where the trauma came from or where it stemmed. I know you touched a little bit briefly on why you were upset. Anger is a part of you discovering, a trigger. Another thing is this: when you recognize the trauma and understand where the root cause come from, or what emotions you are having built around that trauma, or why, or even discover why you were feeling the way you were feeling about that particular area, that's when you begin to go a little bit deeper. So it could be, and yes, therapists can help you draw it out. They won't give you the answer. But what I typically tell my clients is, as a coach, I typically ask questions that most people don't want to ask. So I dig a little bit deeper. You may get frustrated with those questions. Emotions may come up throughout those questions, but there are questions that need to be asked in order for you to be able to pinpoint exactly what happened, when it happened. And then now, once you discover that, we can move a little bit further. So it can be healed, it can be transitioned, and you can identify what those triggers are, but you also have to know how you deal or how you cope with those triggers as they come up. The first reaction is anger. Why? Because that's our natural response when we feel uncomfortable or something doesn't feel good to us. But 9 times out of 10, the reason why you begin to feel angry is because somewhere along the way you have felt this before and it was not recognized. So when you found yourself in that situation again, you didn't know how to handle it because of the familiarity of it being unresolved before. I'm done.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to leave Jabrita's answer, but we can probably reapproach this when we do a workshop, Yane, if you're interested in that. But I'm going to move on just to give some other people a chance, so we're not long-winded on that one question. Does anyone else have any questions to bring out, to ask, or to type in the chat? In the chat, one person made a good point. They said, I've seen where people go in the other direction. And so they go out and they become drunks, promiscuous, or rebels. And I guess that comment is in relation to how people cope with dealing with the cults. So is there anyone else? Okay. So I want to thank Yane again. I'm sorry. I want to thank Yane for coming on and asking a question. But I also want to thank Jabrita Shelton for coming on and offering some expertise. I hope that the presentation was beneficial, if for nothing else, to get you to begin to ask some questions and do some self-examination. Anytime I look at that information, I realize that in some way I'm caught up in something, and it gives you a chance to self-examine and figure out how to pull yourself out. And one of the best experiences I've ever had was sitting my behind still and getting into me. And so maybe spending some time with self is a great start. So thank you all for jumping on. Day 25, we have 5 more days to go. Tomorrow we have another presentation. It's going to be on rebirth. And I hope that you all have a fantastic day. Please share the information about 30-day redemption so other people come on. And have a fantastic rest of your Saturday. Take care.